Samantha Harper had always prided herself on handling life's surprises with poise. A successful interior designer, independent, self-reliant, she had carefully built a life where she controlled the narrative. She had a plan, a schedule, a calm, predictable existence. But life, it seemed, had a way of rewriting even the most carefully penned plans. It started with the divorce papers, signed, final, and sealed. The end of a marriage she had entered too young, too hopeful, and too naive. She had walked out of the courtroom with her head high, telling herself it was the right choice, that freedom was worth the heartache. And then, the news came. She was pregnant, alone, divorced, and utterly unprepared for the tiny, relentless life growing inside her. Samantha stared at the positive test on her bathroom counter, hands trembling. Her mind spun with possibilities, fears, and questions. Who could she tell? How would she manage? And most importantly, how would she navigate the reality that she would now raise this child without the man she had once vowed to spend her life with? She was lost in thought when her phone buzzed. A text from someone she had hoped never to hear from again, Alexander Grayson. Billionaire. Ex-husband. The man who had once promised forever but had walked away with cold precision. "We need to talk. Urgent. Please call me." Samantha's heart skipped. Anger, fear, and panic collided. What could he possibly want now? She hadn't expected him to know. She hadn't planned for this confrontation. Against her better judgment, she called. The line clicked, and his calm, composed voice answered. "Samantha." "Alexander," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What do you want?" "I just need to know something," he said, tone measured but sharp. "I heard some news. Is it true?" Her stomach dropped. "What news?" she asked cautiously. "That you're pregnant," he said simply, the words slicing through her defenses. Her hands froze around the phone. How did you know?" "I have my ways," he said quietly, "and I need to know if it's true. I need to understand what this means, for both of us." Samantha's mind raced. She had anticipated shock, anger, or denial from him, but his voice, calm, controlled, deliberate, made her feel exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Yes," she admitted, voice trembling, "I'm pregnant, and you need to understand. I'm doing this alone." "Alone?" he echoed, the sharp edge of disbelief slipping in despite his controlled tone. "Yes," she said firmly, finding strength in the clarity of her words. "You're divorced. I'm divorced. And this is my responsibility." There was a pause on the line. Then, in a lower tone that made her stomach churn, he said, "I see." Samantha braced herself for anger, blame, or a demand for involvement. But instead, he was quiet, considerate, calculating. "I need to come see you," he said finally. "We need to discuss this properly." "No," she said quickly, shaking her head even though he couldn't see her. "You don't. I don't want your involvement. I've handled everything so far. I can continue to—" "It's not about involvement," he interrupted softly, insistently. "It's about responsibility. And truthfully, about us, whether you like it or not. This changes everything." Her chest tightened. "You make it sound like it's your choice, not my choice," he said. "But my reality, and yours. We need to figure this out before decisions are made that we can't undo." Samantha's heart raced. The reality was undeniable. Alexander Grayson, the man who had walked out of her life so completely, had now re-entered in the most disruptive, intimate way imaginable. She didn't know if she was ready for him, or if she wanted him, or if she could trust him with the most important secret of her life. But one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same, because Alexander Grayson had discovered she was pregnant, and that discovery changed everything. Samantha Harper had barely settled into her apartment after a long, sleepless night when a sharp, insistent knock rattled her door. Her stomach twisted. That knock could mean only one thing. She took a deep breath, smoothed the front of her simple blouse, and opened the door. Alexander Grayson stood there, as immaculate and imposing as ever, tailored suit perfectly pressed, his dark eyes scanning her face with an intensity that made her pulse jump. He looked just as she remembered, controlled, confident, untouchable. "Alexander," she said cautiously, stepping back. "What are you?" "I came to see you," he interrupted, his voice low even, but with an edge that made her catch her breath. "We need to talk." She wanted to slam the door, to retreat, to pretend the knock had never happened. But there was something in his presence that rooted her to the spot. Something magnetic, compelling, and terrifying all at once. "This isn't a social call," he continued, stepping slightly into the doorway. "I don't just show up unannounced unless it's serious. And this is serious." Her heart raced. "I don't know what you mean." "I've said everything over the phone." "Not everything," he said, voice low, calculating. "Not enough. I need to understand what we're dealing with." Samantha's pulse hammered. She had been preparing herself for this conversation, rehearsing words, planning boundaries. But now that he was standing in front of her, with that calm, commanding presence, all her preparation seemed laughable. She crossed her arms, trying to maintain control. "Alexander, I told you I'm handling it, alone. That's my decision." He studied her silently, expression unreadable. Then, finally, he said, "I understand that you want to handle it alone. I respect that. But there are things you can't decide alone, not without the full truth of our situation." Samantha's hands trembled slightly. "Our situation ended when we divorced. Everything else is my responsibility and..." "Ow. That includes this." "Not entirely," he countered, stepping closer, closing the space between them in a way that made her pulse race. "This child, it's mine too, and that changes the game, whether you want it to or not." Her breath caught. She had expected denial, anger, even disdain. But he wasn't angry. He wasn't dismissive. He was calculating, intense, impossibly aware, and utterly real. "You," she began, but the words faltered. "How do you argue with a truth you've known, deep down, but never spoken aloud? How do you fight someone who sees every layer of you, past, present, and future, without hesitation?" "I'm not here to fight," Alexander said quietly. "I'm here to understand, to plan, to protect, to figure out how we move forward without destroying each other or ourselves." Samantha shook her head, trying to regain composure. "Protect? From what?" "From mistakes," he said, voice low, deliberate. "From assumptions, from fear. From the things we can't undo if we don't think carefully. From everything that comes with this child." She swallowed hard. Everything that comes with this child. The weight of those words, his presence, and the reality of her situation hit her all at once. For months she had been imagining handling the pregnancy alone, navigating every challenge, every appointment, every milestone. And now, Alexander Grayson, the man who had walked away, had reinserted himself into her life, making everything far more complicated. "You don't just show up," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Not after everything, not after..." "I know," he interrupted gently, "and I'm sorry for leaving, for the divorce, for everything that made this moment necessary, but I can't undo it. I can only be here now, and you need me to be, even if you don't want to admit it yet." Samantha's pulse raced. The weight of his words, the sincerity in his eyes, the intensity of his presence, it was overwhelming, and it was magnetic. "You have no idea how much I've planned for this," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Alone. Every detail, every precaution, every nightmare I've prepared for. I've imagined doing it without you, and now you're here." "I know," he said, stepping closer, hand hovering near hers but not touching. "And I understand. I also know that things have changed, that everything is different now. And if you let me, we can face this together, Her hands trembled, clutching the edge of the counter for support. Together? Yes, he said softly, because this isn't just about the past. It's about the future, and that future includes you, me, and this child. Whether we like it or not, that connection exists. It's real, and we can't ignore it. Samantha's breath caught. Connection, real, child. Words she had never imagined using in relation to Alexander Grayson now hung in the air between them. I don't know if I can trust you, she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. Not after everything. Not after the divorce. You don't have to, he said, voice calm, almost reverent. Not yet. Trust isn't immediate. But I need you to believe me when I say, I won't abandon you or this child. Not again. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll figure it out. Together. Her pulse raced. Her chest tightened. Her carefully constructed independence, her armor, her shield, shivered under the weight of his sincerity. She wanted to pull back, to retreat, to protect herself. But she also wanted to believe him, to lean into the possibility that he might truly be different this time. Alexander's gaze softened, studying her face, memorizing every detail. You're scared, he said quietly, and you should be. But we don't have to face this alone. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Her breath hitched. And if I let you, then we'll navigate this together, he said. And maybe we'll find out that some discoveries, unexpected ones, can change everything in ways we never imagined. Samantha looked at him, heart racing, mind swirling. She had imagined facing this pregnancy alone, untouchable, self-reliant. And yet, here he was, calm, commanding, sincere. The man who had once been everything she lost, now offering everything she never knew she wanted. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she let the silence stretch, heavy with anticipation and fear. Alexander didn't move. He waited, patient but unwavering, allowing her to process the shock, the intensity, and the possibility. Finally, she whispered, voice trembling but firm, "We'll talk. ND. We'll figure it out. Together." Alexander's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, but it made her chest ache with relief and something else. Something dangerous, thrilling, and utterly real. Good, he said quietly, stepping just slightly closer, closing the remaining space between them. Because this is only the beginning. And I promise you, Samantha, we'll handle it. Whatever it takes. Her pulse raced. She knew he meant it. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future. Not alone, not fearful, not abandoned. A future where Alexander Grayson wasn't just a name from her past, but part of the journey she hadn't thought she could share, because he had discovered the truth, and that discovery changed everything. Samantha paced her apartment, the soft tap of her shoes against the hardwood floor marking each second of tension. The conversation with Alexander earlier hadn't ended. It had simply paused, leaving a weight in the air. Heavy, charged, impossible to ignore. She glanced at the small crib in the corner of the spare room, still untouched, still empty. A future she had once imagined alone now suddenly included someone else. Someone who had walked out of her life years ago, only to return at the most intimate, vulnerable moment imaginable. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. "I'm coming by. We need to set boundaries, plans, and be honest with each other." Her chest tightened. "Boundaries," she muttered. "Plans." As if she could And this. Plan him. Control the billionaire who had always commanded attention and influence wherever he went. By the time he arrived, Samantha had spent 20 minutes rearranging the living room, straightening cushions, even adjusting the position of the lamp so it didn't cast harsh shadows. She wanted to look composed, in control, capable. But the truth was, Alexander's presence made her feel anything but in control. He entered without knocking, as he always did, confident and assured. One look at him, perfectly dressed in a dark tailored suit, and she felt her carefully curated composure begin to crumble. "Hello," he said, voice low, steady, magnetic. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "You are," she replied honestly, arms crossed, trying to sound more in control than she felt. "But I suppose I should have expected it." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Expected me? Did you expect me to show up when this affects both our lives?" Samantha wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, wanted to maintain the armor of independence she had built. But she couldn't deny that she wanted him here too. The thought made her chest tighten with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "Fine," she said finally, gesturing toward the sofa. "Sit. Let's talk." He obliged, though the tension in his posture betrayed him. He wasn't here for a casual visit. He was here to stake his claim, to assert presence, to ensure the reality of their shared responsibility wasn't ignored. "First," he began, voice steady but intense, "we need clarity. This child is mine, and I need to know every detail. Medical appointments, health updates, everything. I'm not asking permission, I'm telling you, this is non-negotiable." Samantha felt her pulse spike. "Non-negotiable?" she echoed, disbelief mixing with fear. "Alexander, this isn't just about you, it's about me too, and I'm capable of handling—" "No," he interrupted softly but firmly. "You are capable, but I have a right to be involved, to know, to protect, and you will allow it?" Her breath hitched, his intensity, the certainty in his voice, the subtle dominance in his presence. It was overwhelming, and yet she found herself nodding, more from fascination than agreement. "Fine," she said finally, voice trembling slightly. "You'll know, but this doesn't mean I'm letting you control anything else. Not my life, not my decisions, not me." Alexander's gaze softened, dark eyes studying her face, with a mix of determination and something else, something raw, vulnerable, and impossible to ignore. "I wouldn't dare, not fully, but I will be involved, and I will protect, that much I promise. For you, for this child." Her chest tightened. Promises from him had always been complicated, broken, delayed, or manipulative. But this, sincerity radiated from him in a way that made her pulse jump, her instincts flare, and her heart ache. For a long moment they simply sat, neither speaking. The silence filled with tension, unspoken words and emotions that neither was prepared to voice. Finally, Samantha broke it. "Alexander, you have no idea how complicated this is for me. I've imagined raising this child alone, and now," her voice trembled, "now you're here, and I don't know if I can trust you, or even want you." Alexander leaned forward slightly, voice low, deliberate, magnetic. "Samantha, you don't have to trust me immediately, and you don't have to want me, but you will have to acknowledge that I'm here, that I exist in this life too, whether you like it or not." Her pulse raced. His words were firm but not cruel, commanding but not threatening. He was both the storm and the calm, the impossible reality she had to face. "And what if she started, hesitant. "What if I can't handle all of this? If I fail?" "You won't fail," he said simply, "because you're not alone. And I will make sure of it. I will be here. Every appointment, every milestone, every fear, every joy, I'll be here. And you'll have me to rely on, whether you want to or not." Samantha's chest tightened. She had imagined independence, control, and the safety of facing everything herself. But here was Alexander, insistent, protective, unwavering. He was claiming a role in her life, in their child's life, and in ways she hadn't anticipated. She began, voice trembling. "You're insufferable. And you," he said softly, leaning closer, are extraordinary, and I see it, always have. Even when we failed, even when I walked away, I never stopped seeing why. Oh, this child, you, it's a reminder of what matters, and I will not let it be ignored. Her breath caught. She had imagined confrontation, perhaps anger, perhaps distance. But not this raw, honest intensity that left her trembling, exposed, and undeniably aware of how much she still needed him in ways she hadn't admitted. "Alexander," she whispered, voice barely audible. "You don't understand." "I do," he said, placing a hand lightly over hers, careful, deliberate, almost reverent. "Maybe not fully, but enough to know that we can't undo this, and I won't let either of us face it alone. Not anymore." Samantha looked at him, heart hammering, mind racing. The man who had walked out of her life, who had abandoned her emotionally, was now offering presence, protection, and involvement in the most intimate way possible. And as overwhelming as it was, she realized something she hadn't expected. She wanted it. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, uncertainty in her voice. "You don't have to decide now," he said softly. "But know this. I'm not walking away. Not from you, not from this child, not from the responsibility I share. And I never will." Samantha swallowed hard. The weight of his words, his presence, and the unshakable certainty in his eyes left her trembling. For the first time, she imagined a future that wasn't solitary, a future where Alexander Grayson wasn't just her past, but a part of the journey she hadn't thought she could share. And she realized that, whether she wanted it or not, this discovery, the pregnancy, the child, their shared responsibility, had already changed everything, because Alexander had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days following Alexander's unexpected arrival were a delicate and tense dance. Samantha Harper tried to maintain her carefully constructed independence, but it was increasingly difficult with Alexander inserting himself into her life. He wasn't just present, he was everywhere, checking in, making arrangements, insisting on attending medical appointments, and asking questions she hadn't expected him to ask. At first, she bristled. Her walls, built over years of solitude and self-reliance, resisted every intrusion. "You're overstepping," she said sharply one evening, arms crossed as she faced him in her living room. The city lights glimmered through the windows, painting them in a soft golden glow. "I'm ensuring this child, and you, are protected," he replied evenly, tone calm but unyielding. "I know you think you can do it alone, but this isn't a boardroom project you can manage on spreadsheets and schedules. This is life, real, messy, fragile life." Samantha's chest tightened. "I can manage. I've been planning for months. I've done this alone." "Alone doesn't mean safe," Alexander interrupted, stepping closer, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "And I won't let you risk anything. Your health, the baby, your peace of mind, without me." Her pulse raced, the intensity of his presence, combined with the sincerity in his tone, made her feel unsteady. For the first time in months, Samantha realized that she couldn't control everything, no matter how much she tried. "And you?" she challenged, voice low but firm. "What about you? You left me once. How do I know you won't walk away again?" Alexander's jaw tightened, a flash of pain crossing his features before he forced it back under control. "I left because I was an idiot, because I didn't understand what I had. I won't make that mistake again. Not with this child, not with you, not ever." Samantha's heart skipped. Words like promises, apologies, and truth blurred together, but there was a weight to his statement, a gravity she couldn't deny. "You expect me to just believe that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "No," he admitted softly. "I expect you to see it, to watch me prove it, day by day, action by action, not words, actions." Samantha's pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed to protect herself, to maintain the careful walls she had built. Yet every fiber of her being also wanted to let him in, to allow his presence, his protection, his strength to fill the gaps she had been carrying alone. Over the next week, Alexander's presence became a constant, subtle yet unshakable. He accompanied her to doctor visits, helped organize the apartment for the baby, and even cooked simple meals when she was too exhausted to stand. Each action, though practical, carried an undercurrent of something deeper, something intimate, protective, and undeniably personal. One evening, as Samantha rested on the sofa, tired from a long day of appointments and preparations, Alexander knelt in front of her, his eyes level with hers. "You're exhausted," he observed softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "And you're carrying more than just a child. You're carrying the weight of everything we've been through, all the mistakes, all the fears." Samantha exhaled slowly. I can handle it, I always do." "No," he said gently, shaking his head. "You can't handle everything alone. Not this, not anymore. And you don't have to." Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to assert independence, but the tenderness in his tone, the unwavering sincerity in his gaze, made her chest ache. "You're softening me," she admitted, a weak smile tugging at her lips. "I hope so," he said softly, leaning closer. "Because if I can't reach you now, if I can't help you see that we can face this together, then we've lost more than time. We've lost everything." Her heart raced. The intensity of his presence, combined with the vulnerability he rarely showed, left her trembling. She realized with startling clarity that she wanted him, not just as a protector or a co-parent, but as a man, a real, tangible, alive presence in her life. Alexander reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Samantha, look at me. See that I'm not leaving. See that this—" He gestured toward her belly, then back to her eyes. "This us is more than mistakes or regrets. It's a chance to start again." Her pulse pounded. Every instinct screamed caution. Every rational thought urged restraint. Yet the raw honesty in his voice, the undeniable warmth in his touch, the way he looked at her as if she were the only person in existence, made her heart surrender in ways she hadn't anticipated. She began, but words failed her. He smiled, gently, softly, leaning just close enough that she felt the heat radiating from him. "You don't have to say anything, just feel this, feel me, feel the possibility that we can get it right this time." Her breath caught. She had imagined independence, control, and the safety of facing this pregnancy alone. And now, Alexander was here, breaking through her walls, softening her defenses, forcing her to confront feelings she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The tension between them was electric, charged with past pain, present vulnerability, and the undeniable pull of attraction neither of them could ignore. And in that moment, Samantha realized the truth. She wanted him. She wanted his presence, his protection, and something deeper, something neither had dared to voice until now. Alexander's hand brushed a lock of hair from her cheek, thumb tracing lightly along her skin. "I won't make promises I can't keep," he whispered, voice low, husky. "But I will be here, every step of this journey. And if you let me, maybe we can find a way to heal, to love, to start again. Together." Samantha swallowed hard. Every rational instinct screamed caution, yet every fiber of her being responded to his sincerity, his intensity, and the undeniable pull of connection. She exhaled slowly, letting her hands rest in his. We'll see," she whispered. Alexander's dark eyes softened, and for the first time in years, Samantha felt the impossible. Hope. Real, fragile, terrifying hope. Because the walls she had built for years, walls of independence, caution, and fear, were finally falling. And Alexander Grayson, with a presence that was both protective and impossible to resist, was helping her tear them down. For the first time, Samantha allowed herself to imagine a future that included him. A future that wasn't solitary, wasn't lonely, and wasn't defined by mistakes. A future where he wouldn't walk away. A future where she didn't have to face everything alone. And she realized that some discoveries, like a pregnancy she had thought she would navigate alone, could change everything. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Samantha's apartment, once quiet and solitary, now felt alive with the presence of Alexander. He wasn't just visiting. He had integrated himself into her life, into the routine of her days and the rhythm of her growing pregnancy. At first, Samantha bristled at the changes, the way he organized the pantry, rearranged the nursery, and insisted on accompanying her to doctor appointments. But gradually she noticed the thoughtfulness behind his acti. The protective way he handled everything, the care that was impossible to ignore. One rainy evening she found herself sitting on the sofa, swollen feet tucked beneath her, as Alexander brought over a blanket and a cup of tea. The soft patter of rain against the window created a cocoon around them, private and intimate. "You should rest," he said, voice low and steady. "You've been on your feet all day. Let me take care of you, at least for a while." Samantha exhaled, sinking into the cushions. "I'm fine," she said automatically, though her voice lacked conviction. He knelt beside her, brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. "No, you're not fine. You're carrying a child, you're exhausted, and you're trying to do everything on your own. I won't let you." Her pulse raced. His words were gentle, but there was an undeniable authority in them, a certainty that made her chest tighten. She had spent years building a life where she relied only on herself. Now, here was Alexander, refusing to let her be alone, refusing to allow her to shoulder everything by herself. I'm not used to this," she admitted quietly. "Neither am I," he said, voice soft, magnetic. "But I know one thing. I'm not walking away again. Not from you, not from this child, not from the life we're building whether we're ready or not." Her heart thudded painfully. Words she had tried to suppress, hopes she had buried beneath caution, surfaced with unexpected clarity. She wanted him. She wanted his sense, his protection, his involvement, not just for the child, but for herself. Alexander's hand hovered near hers, then lightly brushed against it. The gesture, small as it was, sent a jolt through her nerves. "I've made mistakes," he murmured, "but I've learned. And this time, I'll do it right. I promise." Samantha swallowed hard. The sincerity in his eyes, the intensity in his voice, and the warmth of his touch made her chest ache. I want to believe that," she whispered. "Then believe it," he said softly, taking her hand in his. "Because we don't have forever to figure it out. This child, our child, deserves both of us. And so do we." For the first time in months, Samantha allowed herself to relax, leaning slightly against him. The tension she had carried, of fear, of uncertainty, of the mistakes of the past, began to ease under the weight of his presence. "I never imagined," she began, voice trembling, "that we'd be here like this. After everything." "I know," he said softly, brushing a gentle thumb across her hand. "Neither did I. But here we are, and I won't let go again." Her pulse raced. The intimacy of the moment, the raw honesty, and the undeniable chemistry between them made it impossible to resist. She tilted her head toward him, breath catching. Alexander leaned closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Samantha," he murmured, voice husky, magnetic. "I've waited for this, waiting for a chance to prove I can be the man you need, to be the father our child deserves. Andy, maybe. To be the partner you never thought I could be." Her heart skipped. Words faltered. The walls she had spent years building around her heart wavered, threatened, and finally gave way. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his cheek. "I want that too," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. His lips curved into a soft, relieved smile. "Then we start now," he said, leaning in to capture hers in a kiss that was gentle, deliberate, and full of promise. The kiss was more than attraction. It was reconciliation, understanding, and a commitment neither of them could deny. Pulling back slightly, Alexander rested his forehead against hers, his voice low, intimate. "Samantha, this isn't just about the past, or even the mistakes we made. This is about the future, and I want that future with you, with our child." Tears pricked at her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief of finally allowing herself to hope, to trust, and to accept that love could exist again. I want that too," she repeated. The weeks that followed solidified their new dynamic. Alexander was no longer just a presence, he was an active partner. They attended every doctor appointment together, discussing names, nursery layouts, and baby-proofing plans. The tension between them, which had once been sharp and almost painful, softened into a connection marked by understanding, compromise, and a rekindled intimacy that went far deeper than physical attraction. One evening, as Samantha rested with her hand on her growing belly, Alexander knelt beside her once more, holding her hand and staring into her eyes with a rare vulnerability. "You've changed everything," he murmured. "Not just for me, but for yourself, for our child. You've shown strength, courage, and grace, and I see it all. I see you." Samantha's chest tightened. "I couldn't have done this alone," she admitted softly. "Even if I tried, you didn't have to," he said gently. "And you won't have to, not ever again, because we're in this together, and I'll spend every day proving that I mean it, that I'm not walking away this time." Her pulse quickened, but it was different now. Not fear, not anxiety, but anticipation, relief, and love. A love that had taken years to understand, years to rekindle, and years to allow herself to feel fully. Alexander leaned closer, brushing his lips against her temple softly. "We've been given a second chance," he whispered. "Not just for us, but for this child. And I intend to make every second count." Samantha exhaled, letting herself melt into the warmth of his embrace. For the first time in years, she felt complete, safe, and cherished. Because in the end, discovery had changed everything. The divorce, the mistakes, the distance, they all faded into the past. What mattered now was the present. Alexander's unwavering presence, her growing child, and the unexpected, undeniable rekindling of a love that refused to be ignored. And Samantha Harper knew one undeniable truth. Sometimes, the moments you fear the most, the moments that shake your carefully controlled life, turn out to be the moments that change everything for the better. Alexander Grayson had returned. He had discovered the truth, and together they would face the future, stronger, united, and ready for whatever life had in store. More stories will keep coming, so please don't forget to like and subscribe.